Hello, everybody. It's a great honor for me to be here today to address this audience and to make use of this opportunity to present Artsakh to you, because it's not very often that we get a chance to actually do so because of many limitations that we are subject to due to the yet unrecognized status of Artsakh. Why do I say yet? Because I do believe that the world one day will mature enough to recognize it. And I would like to thank the organizers of this wonderful event that brought us all together and gave me this chance to present to you my people and our struggle. My people, which is also you. We are not separate in that sense. So that you can imagine what is Artsakh about, I want to just give a brief history, and I will try to speak more about the human experiences rather than give you a history or a politics lesson on the matter. So if you can imagine, Artsakh's story, the problem as such, started back in 1918 when the Bolsheviks, coming to the South Caucasus, one day decided to take Karabakh from Armenia and present it to Azerbaijan. And they didn't bother to ask the will of the people of Karabakh, they just did it. And from there on, the people of Artsakh, on many occasions, tried to complain about this, tried to make their voice heard. But of course, in the Soviet system, this was impossible. And most of the time, the organizers of this movement, of these attempts, were sent to prisons, or they were actually sent to Siberia. So when Gorbachev came into power in Russia, and he announced about freedom of speech, democracy, that is where Artsakhites saw a real possibility to raise their voice again. And they went to the street to peacefully demonstrate, to make their voice heard, to announce about their right to live free and happily on their ancestral lands. Unfortunately, this was not perceived adequately by Azerbaijan or Azerbaijani SSR, because it was the only time that Karabakh was part of Azerbaijan. This was the Soviet period, the 70 years of Soviet period, where we as Armenians had no way of feeling close to our identity. All of a sudden, we could not listen to Armenian music. We were not taught to Armenian dance, for example, Armenian TV, Armenian radio. All of this was not available here. All we had was Azerbaijani radio and TV, and of course the Central Soviet broadcasting channels. In those situations, also in the schools, as a student, I had to study Azerbaijani history, but not Armenian history. I had also to study Azeri language, which is not bad. I mean, it's always good and handy, especially in the given situation. Not that I mastered it, but still, it was not a bad opportunity in that sense. However, when we went into the streets, we could not imagine at all that one day we will end up being attacked by a patron state, the citizens of whom we were considered by them. So what was left for us to do was to make sure that we can survive and preserve our language, our culture, a bit like what your grandparents did back in Turkey when they didn't want to leave their houses. They didn't want to go to other countries to survive. They wanted to stay in their native homes, in their houses, and bring up their children. So when the pogroms against Armenian population of Azerbaijan started, because that was the response Azerbaijan gave to our peaceful demonstrations, and many Armenians were brutally killed, and many had a chance to escape, and many of whom have found refuge also in this country, for which I would like to thank the US for actually accepting, giving them refuge here where they had a chance to build a new life. We in Karabakh didn't know that it was coming to us. And it is when Operation Kaltso, Operation Ring started, and I will explain to you what is it. It is when Azerbaijani forces, twinned by Soviet forces, came to the houses of Armenians under the pretext of passport control. They started it from the Shahuman region, many of whom live in Fresno, actually. I had a wonderful meeting with them yesterday in Sacramento. And they basically took away the men, and the women and children and elderly were left alone. That is when we realized that history is repeating itself. It is nothing else but the same handwriting being used now against us in Karabakh. So when we talk about Karabakh movement, I want you to see it as a struggle not only for freedom and liberties, but a struggle, if you want, as a good diaspora friend of mine has put it, it's a struggle, it's the stories about the struggle that you used to hear from your grandparents. If you want, Artsakh of today is yesterday's Van, it's yesterday's Erzurum, Ardahan, it's all of that together, and it's real. And thank God that we succeeded to actually fight for that right, and we managed to strengthen this right by creating a democratic statehood whereby, after the Declaration of Independence, every single authority, every president, all the parliaments, all the authorities in the local self-government were elected by all popular votes and no other way. More so, as we've moved further and we started strengthening our civil society, we also created the human rights, or the Ombudsman's office, who is basically the watchdog of the rights of the Artsakh people living inside the country. Because we fully understand that when you live in a country that has a 24-hour on-duty soldiers on a hostile border, you need to have citizens who are proud of who they are, who know that they are the owners of the land, they are the owners of their homes, their country, and they have to feel proud, and they should want to protect what they have, rather than want to lose it somehow under circumstances that they were not prepared for. So in a sense, today's Artsakh is a country where many of those rights internally have been secured. However, because Artsakh is not recognized to this day by the international community, its citizens are actually feeling the burden of this unrecognized status on their everyday life. For example, a refugee that has come from Baku to Karabakh is not considered, is not recognized as a refugee by international organizations. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees has never been to Karabakh, nor have been any other UN agencies or any international other players. Because for them, if you have chosen to come to Karabakh, you automatically become an unrecognized refugee. So you are non-existent for those organizations. You are non-existent also in the situations whereby you want to study abroad, but your diploma is not recognized by the outside world, because they say there is no such thing as Artsakh State University. There is no Artsakh State. It is not recognized, and hence diploma is not recognized either. It is when you want to go to the hospital and you take the description of your illness stamped by Ministry of Health of Artsakh, and people say, we cannot take this stamp as for real because we don't recognize your country. So there are many, many things that we still have to overcome. And that's where we try to rely on the outside world, and especially on our diaspora, because where we cannot go through the official channels, where we cannot knock the diplomatic doors, there are doors that can be opened by our compatriots living here. Because take any organization, take any structure in the world, there are always very many Armenians on high-ranking and on regular positions. And that's where we should actually unite our forces to try and preserve what we managed to maintain by fighting. Not that any Karabakhi wanted to fight. All of Karabakhis are very peace-loving, freedom-loving people, but they had to fight because they were attacked. And they were in a situation whereby they were under blockade. And there was no outside connection either. So the only way left to them, the only choice they had to make, was to stand there, to have their ground, and to struggle for their very right to live. And when we say human rights, it's not just something imaginary. It's not something you understand like a Medicare insurance or a social insurance that will provide a better life for you. It's actually the very right to physical existence. It is a very existential right, if you want me to say, because even today, after signing of the ceasefire in May 1994, the people of Artsakh on daily basis know in their minds that their lives can be endangered at any second. And the only guarantee that we have of our security is actually our army. This is the only conflict in the world whereby there are no peacekeepers, and the peace is maintained purely thanks to the balance of forces. And I think this is an important thing to remember when we think about Artsakh. And I don't want you to think about Artsakh as a dream homeland. I don't want it to be in your dreams. I want you to see it real. I want you to see it the way I see it, that it is a country, it is people who, like you, every day go to work, take their kids to kindergarten, schools. It's just a normal life. And it is on the borders that soldiers are making sure that we can live the life we live today. So when I say I want you to be part of it, what I mean is we have a potential here to use. And I'm sure that it's not only diaspora that can do a lot for Artsakh. It has done a lot already. During the war, after the war, Artsakh wouldn't have been the Artsakh that it is today without diaspora's help. In reconstruction, in volunteers, my hometown, Martuni, wouldn't have been there if it wasn't for an LA guy called Monte Melkonyan, who came and defended it and kept it and encouraged us to do the same. So in a way, we're really very connected in that sense. And I want you to feel as proud. I want you to come to Artsakh, to visit it, to see it for your eyes, and to experience what I experience. The pride that I am an Artsakhi, and I am part of the common Armenianhood, and that we managed to preserve it, to develop it, and I hope that we can actually do it by exchanges. I'm sure that we'll find ways of giving also to you from Artsakh, and I'm sure that with the talk with Shushan, we'll be able to tackle this more in detail. Thank you for your attention.